are great at working and doing. So yes, coffee filters are awesome to put in there. And then what I do is I paint them with an acrylic paint, because both inside and out. And thanks, Harry. And then you are able to just use those and make them nice bright colors, hang them one on their own, hang them as three if you want. And what I've discovered is, if I go to, we've got a shop called Salvos, which is where people take things they don't want anymore but are still in good condition. And I often find a colander in there, and you get it for $1. And then I just spruce it up, and I can use it for other things as well, because you can't go through too many colanders at the same time. Right, where were we? Now, baskets are also wonderful. Your old baskets, you can either actually put the soil in the basket. I always paint the inside of the basket just to protect the wicker. And then you can either line it with plastic, make sure there are a few holes at the bottom to allow water out, and then put your sand in and plant your plants, or just put your pots in. You can actually just put your pots in, and that works just as well as well. So you can put them on the stairs, you can put them at the gate, you can really make them into something really pretty and delightful for others to see and for you to be able to see. Your old watering can that's probably really reached the end of its life and maybe even has a hole in the bottom, no problem. Just put some soil into your can. I actually take that nozzle off the can and I feed in some ivy, and I plant ivy in the main part of the can, but low down. And the ivy then grows out through the spout. So it looks like there's water flowing out of the spout. And it really looks so attractive. And then you can put brightly colored flowers at the top. And it just turns what was something that was going to be turfed into something that is really beautiful to be able to be used. So those are just 3 simple ideas. Any comments, any questions, any ideas? Not yet. Okay. Right. Now, there are so many ways to use tires. All of us go, and I was equally, and I don't always bring all home, but I inevitably bring one home. When you go and have your tires replaced, what do? You leave them behind at the tire shop. What am I going to do with tires? Well, your tires can be turned into a variety of things. You can either hang them on the wall and have your plants growing at the bottom, which I used to do in South Africa. I come from South Africa. I lived there for 63 years before 3 years ago moving to Australia. I used to plant in there. Here, I'm a little scared too, because we kind of have some spiders that are kind of large. And I don't want to put my hand in to do my gardening and discover that this thing is coming out next to me. I don't dislike spiders. I like them in the garden. I don't like them too close to me. So if he's happy in the garden, I'm happy too. But just don't come and frighten me along the way. My husband had a case of, he was gardening, he loves gardening, and I heard this almighty scream. He just called my name, and I knew there was a problem. I went running up to the top, and coming over our wall, we've got a low wall from the park, and there's plants growing in front of us, was the set of brown legs were coming up very carefully over the top of the wall, right where his nose was, where he'd been digging. And eventually then came the rest of this it was much bigger than my hand, spider. So he took a look at us, decided we were not what he wanted, and he backed off down, and we haven't seen him since, fortunately. But he was our first encounter with a large spider in Australia. Right. Another way of using your tires is The wall of the tire is not strong, and it's easy to cut with a strong pair of secateurs, or you can use a cutting knife. Anything that is fairly sharp, you would be able to cut it with. Obviously, the tread is much more difficult, but the actual wall of the tire is easy. And you can scallop it or make it into diamonds or triangles, and then flick it outwards. That then allows you to have a flower pot. And again, inside, I put mesh so that it keeps the soil in, with some rocks on top, and then my soil. And I have beautiful flower pots outside. You can plant your vegetables. You can have one pot per vegetable, or you can have 2 or 3 types in one pot if it's only you or 2 of you. So those work very well for your planting and cutting. You can also put one tire inside another tire, and it gives you a double effect.
What type of paint did you use?
I use acrylic paint. Acrylic paint works on most things.
Oh,
I
okay.
usually,
For
I
vegetables
just,
too. Okay.
yeah, I just sand with a light sandpaper, I just rub down my tire just to get off any extra of anything that might be there, and then acrylic paint on it, and away it goes. It works very well. You can also shred your tire. So you just keep one rim and you shred the rest, and you just wind it in and out of each other. It makes it into a very beautiful planter, something different. In South Africa, I had a little pond. I didn't have a large garden, but I love water. So I made a little pond. That's not my pond, but it's similar to what I had. I took a large tire, the largest tire I could find when I went to the tire place. They're very happy to give you tires, the old ones. And I lined it with plastic because I wasn't sure where I wanted to put it. Eventually, I put down cement. But while I was deciding, I lined it with thick plastic, put rocks inside the wall of the tire to hold the plastic nicely. And then I put, every time we went walking, we brought back stones. And we slowly but surely, we would take a packet each, and we would go for a walk and come back with a packet of stones, and then we would place them around it. That is shingle they've put there, but you can also buy white stones and brown stones, those very pretty rounded ones. You can certainly use those. And if you want to have water flowing, you can just build up one side and put a solar pump there so that you don't have any electrics coming out to it. It can then be run as a solar pump. So then it would pump during the day and be quiet during the night, which is actually quite a nice thing. You don't have to turn off if you don't like the sound at night. But then you can put little people around it, you can put lights around it, you can turn it into a really good feature. I did try having fish in it, but the birds and the cat got the fish faster than I could buy them. So I gave up in the end. I decided it really wasn't what I needed to do. So I left it. We also can use your tires. When I was a child, I had a rockery. How many of you had a rockery when you were small or young? And you used to climb in and out of the rockery, get moaned at for standing on the plants. But to get big rocks these days and move big rocks when you're older is not funny. But you can make the same effect using tires. And all you do is put the tires on top of each other, again with mesh inside and your soil, and you can build them up all one color, different colors, and then plant brightly colored flowers in them. And you can make a really spectacular feature in your garden. Any thoughts? Any questions? Anybody like any of the ideas?
I I really like them.
Good. You think you might
I
be able to use them?
I have actually put vegetables in some tires and have done that well at my mom's house, but I didn't know you could paint them, and they did really well, actually.
Oh, yeah. No, they do. They do very well. When I was teaching at a school in South Africa, we took 4 tires, put them on top of each other. I made a slit in the tire so that you could pull it open. not very easily, but you could. And then I planted potatoes in the bottom one. Once it started to get green, then I would put another one on top. And then when I thought the potatoes would be ready, I would open the bottom one and scoop out the soil and the potatoes, and then everything would drop down by one, and that tire would then go on top with all the extra soil that had come out at the bottom, and we had a lovely crop of potatoes, and it just kept growing and it kept going. I never got too high because I kept recycling those 4 tires round and round.
Did you use the acrylic paint on the colanders also?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. The color was really neat.
Yeah, and I don't use a paintbrush. I never use a paintbrush. I use a sponge. And the reason I use a sponge is that you don't get the lines of a paintbrush, and you do get a textured effect, but with the paint, with just dabbing with the sponge. And if by any chance it leaves sometimes it leaves little bubble holes so that are not colored in. If you don't like that effect, then you just go over those again with a second layer, and you get a lovely textured effect. It's still brightly colored, still beautiful, but I haven't got those lines from a paintbrush. So I do everything with a sponge.
Great idea.
I know, but
how do you stop the soil from dropping in the tires that are stacked?
What you've done when you've stacked up those, you put your fine mesh. Put fine mesh over the hole of the tire, the bottom end. And if you've got your tire standing, you put a layer of fine metal mesh down and put some rocks to hold it in it, and then the soil goes on top of that. It doesn't come out.
Oh, you use metal. Okay, I was thinking cloth. Okay, metal.
No,
okay.
metal mesh. Yeah,
Okay.
thin metal mesh. It works beautifully, and it's easy. It's malleable. It's easy to fiddle with and work with. Okay, so those are some nice ideas. Now, other ideas with tires. What happens if you've got a dog that chews its dog bed all the time? Give it a tire. Put its cushion inside the tire. It'll never chew its way through a tire, not in a lifetime. You might get some teeth marks on it, but it won't go very far. So paint it the color that suits the room that the bed is in, and you've got a lovely bed for the dog, and a way of not buying another basket and another basket and another basket. So it's a good way of doing. You can also make really interesting furniture. When I was teaching young children, I always painted the tires, and then I would ask the parents for all their plastic bags or any old cushions or pillows they weren't using. And then I would make the stuffing for the cushions and pop it in. I could take that out. I'd have a zip in it, and I'd be able to wash it every week or every 2 weeks so that it stayed nice and clean. A lovely stuffing for your cushions is soft plastic bags. They make wonderful stuffing. If you haven't got cushions or something like that to stuff them with. Those little fine polystyrene balls are great, but they go everywhere, they get everywhere, and they are really difficult. They stick to everything. So I found old plastic bags was a much better. And people were only too happy to hand over anything plastic that they had, any plastic bags they had. They were trying to get rid of them. So those make a good stuffing. You can also, of course, use foam rubber if you want to go and get a piece of foam rubber cut, and then you just fit it into the tire, and it fits in so comfortably. And the kids fight over who's going to sit on that. But you can make chairs as well with 1.5, in fact, with 3 tires, you can make 2 chairs because you need 1.5 tires per chair. You've got your base, and into the base, you put foam rubber that is covered with material. You take half a tire, you get the square or rounded foam rubber, get it cut to the right size, you cover it with plastic, and then pop it into the tire. They're actually very comfortable. A friend of mine made them, and then you can put little legs. You can buy the little wooden legs that you you usually screw into wood, you would screw it into your tire instead and put a bolt on the top to keep it safe. And it works very well indeed. On my veranda, I used to have 2 tires with a piece of glass on them. And then whenever it was wet, or we knew it was going to rain, I'd take the cushions, put the cushions inside the tires, put the glass on top. My cushions were kept nice and clean and dry until I needed them again afterwards. You can use them as chairs as well, with a harder type base, or you can use 4 tires and a little tire and create the seat in the corner of your patio. And it's actually quite comfortable to sit on. I was surprised. I didn't think it would be, but it's actually very comfortable. And then the top tire has glass on it, and it's your table. So it works very well indeed. Ever thought of making furniture? Yes, Mick.
I never have. A question to go back to the garden part. Is
Yes,
there
sure.
an issue with like leaching from the rubber or anything?
No, I've never had any leaching from the rubber in all the years that I've been gardening and using tires. I've never had a problem. So I would say no. I have never personally ever had problems, and none of my friends who also do it have had a problem.
So how do you clean? Do you just clean the tires with like a wire brush and soap and water or something? Okay.
Yeah, just to get the extra dirt off. And then I use some light sandpaper, because then the paint sticks even better. So I just give it a light sanding with a light sandpaper with my hand, just all the way around. And then I paint. And that works really well.
Do you ever have any off-gassing or smell from the tires when it gets hot? No?
No smell, nothing. The tires are so well made these days, and the rubber that's used and reused doesn't seem to give off anything or give off any smell either. There's no smell from it at all. And I've used them in a lot of places and never had a problem. Any more questions? Okay, let's see. If you've got children or grandchildren, you can use your tires to make an amazing array of garden equipment, things for them to play in. If you've got little grandkids, you can get a tractor tire or quite a big tire. You can fill it with sand in winter and water in summer. Just remember to have something to put over it, because you can drown in this much water, so you don't want that to happen. And in fact, what some people do is they put a wooden piece over it and turn it into a tic-tac-toe game. So they get somebody to cut the right size for them, and then they put that on top of when it's summertime and you've got water in it. When they finish swimming, that goes on top, and everybody's ready to play with that rather than to look underneath where the water is. So it's a good way of protecting it. You can also make swings, either flat or upright. Upright, you can fit 2 lots or even 3 lots of children on it. The round one they can stand on as well. So there are just so many ways for young kids that you can use. My son has built the thing on the top left-hand corner. He's built it. He's got the wood quite high, but he's only got 2 sets of tires at the moment, because my grandson is only 2.5. And so he doesn't want him to go. And the little one is not quite a year. And then as he gets bigger, he will add more tires so that he can climb higher and higher, because he's a daredevil and is up any ladder or up anything that he can find to climb on. So he's really such a cutie and into everything. I unfortunately have to be a virtual grandma. Like a lot of us, he's on another continent, and I'm actually known as Granny in the phone. But I still do a lot of things with him on Zoom so that we can stay connected. And that's something important if you do have grandchildren that live far away. Stay connected with them that way. Right, now, oops, where's my pen gone? There we go. Now let's look at some interesting ideas. Now, we're using things that we have that we don't really know what to do with. So, love the tractor. Yes, it's gorgeous, isn't it? All right. Now, using pallets in the garden is a wonderful thing. There are so many things you can do with pallets, and often companies are only too happy to part with the pallets that they feel are no longer strong enough to maintain carrying the weights they require. And you can paint them up. You can use them for doing your herbs. And of course, your herb grows as big as the roots allow. So if you've only got a little bit of soil and a small area, your plant will not grow big. I bought 2 basil at the same time. One I've kept in a small pot, and that I use in the kitchen, and it's never changed size. The other one I put into a bigger pot. It's nearly 2 meters high at the moment. So that's about 5 foot. So it's just taken off because its roots allowed it to. So if you're wanting to just have a little bit of parsley or a little bit of mint or a little bit of basil, grow them in small pots, and then they will stay small and you can continue to use them in your kitchen. You can also hang your old baking trays off there by just making a hole in the baking tray and putting those hooks, those S-shaped hooks. One hook goes onto the pallet, one hook goes into the baking tray, and you've got a wonderful tray for hanging your plants into it. No matter what shape it is, you can hang it up. How many of you have had birds? Now the bird cage is sitting in the garage or up in the attic, never going to be used again. Bring it down and use it as a planter. A bird cage can really look stunning as a planter. So particularly if you hang some things down from it, it then really does work so well. And watering it doesn't matter because the water will just drain out. Remember at the start, I spoke about a drawer being the only thing left from a chest of drawers or a cupboard. You can then take it, fill it with sand, and then I would suggest planting succulents purely because you don't want water pouring out of it all the time. That wood will eventually give up. So if you put succulents, they don't need a lot of water, easy to do, just spray, and they're done. Now, my stepdaughter, one of my stepdaughters, I should say, I have a large number of them. My husband has a big family, to put it mildly. She doesn't wear shoes. She only wears sneakers. And for her wedding, she wore white sneakers. There was no ways we were going to get her into any shoes. And now she wants to keep those white sneakers. So what she's done is in her lounge, she's put plastic lining into the sneaker. She put little pots of plants in, and now she's got her sneakers as a feature in her lounge, and they look really, really cute. But you can use old boots that you've used for so many years, and you really don't want to throw them away. They've got sentimental value. Don't throw them away. Fill them with plants and put them as a feature in your garden. They really do look so nice. If you were a collector of teapots and milk jugs and cups and saucers, just remember there's no hole in the bottom of these. So you have to be careful how often you water. But you can certainly grow a variety of plants and put them either on planks or put them on an old ladder, and then you'll be able to really enjoy using them. And having flowers, usually flowers that grow and flower very quickly and die are the best ones to put in there, not necessarily the long-term ones. But you can experiment and see which ones work, which ones don't. And now you're able to use and see those things that you had wrapped up so carefully and packed up in the attic, or had out on shelves that were just gathering dust, and more dust. So use what you've got, enjoy it. Don't let it be wrapped and packed away where nobody can see it. Any thoughts?
I have an old, oh, sorry, Joanne, go ahead.
Oh, good.
I have an old bundt pan cake tin.
Mm-hmm.
What would you suggest putting in that? I don't use it for cakes anymore.
Well, if you're going to use it indoors, I would put in succulents. If you're going to use it outdoors, just put a couple of holes in the bottom so that it allows for drainage. You don't want to drown your plants. And then you can plant anything that has a shallow root, because obviously a baking pan's not very deep. So you would go with your pansies, or your portulacus would grow very nicely in there. What else would I think of? Violets. Any pretty little flower would grow very nicely in there. And you could even have some of the ones that grow quite tall. They would also survive very nicely in it. Just checking on whether, when you're buying them, sort of whether their roots are totally root bound in those tiny pots that you buy them in. Then you know that they will survive, but they will spread quite a bit. So don't put too many in at a time. But you can really plant and also work out whether you're putting it in full sun or shade, as to what kind of plant you would buy.
Okay, thank you.
Bulbs also work. Bulbs work well if you're going to do spring bulbs or summer bulbs. They also work very well. They go, they finish, and then you dig them up, put them away in the dark until the next year, and then plant something else. So you can sort of have a variety. Joanne?
Yes, I have a question about the bird cage. What do you have what do you have in the bottom? Did you put like a planter in the bottom of to grow those plants?
I put in the bottom of a when you buy those big pots, you get the pot things that you stand the pot in so that the water doesn't flow everywhere.
Right.
And I use that, and then if I wanted, that was my base, and then I put all my plants in on top of that, and I put some moss around it, or some those coconut mats around as well, so that it maintained and kept the water in, but allowed any excess to go. You can also at the bottom, if you don't want to use an actual stand or a pot holder, just use those the coconut mats that you get, and put those in. They work very well.
Another question is the succulents. That looks like an awfully deep drawer. Did you just fill that whole thing with sand?
Yes, I actually did. I actually did put a lot of sand in there, but I didn't, and I lined it with plastic first so that it didn't affect the drawer. And the drawers usually are only about that deep. Drawers are not as, that picture's quite deceptive. They're not really that deep.
Okay. And just sand. You don't use any soil. You just use sand.
I always use organic potting soil in anything where I'm putting it into a container. Okay. And I always choose the organic one, because then it hasn't got any fertilizers and weird things in it. And the plants really do respond to that.
Thank you.
My husband is a great gardener. I know what I want and I know what I like, but he does all the manual work, and we've just almost finished redoing our little garden. We've only got a 4x7 little garden, but it's really starting to look stunning. Even though it's getting to winter time, it's still looking beautiful. So yeah, it's coming along quite nicely. Right, now let's have a look. If you've got a wall with bricks with those holes in them, it doesn't look so nice at the top. You can always plant a succulent in there. And below that is your paint pots. You've been painting your house, you've been painting something, you've got all these old paint pots lying around. They make magic pots for your plants. Any kind of plant can be planted in them, just a couple of holes at the bottom to allow the water to go through. And if you're putting it somewhere where you don't want the water to drip through, make sure you've got a good layer of rocks at the bottom that can absorb the water. So the water can lie between the rocks, but also make sure that you don't overwater. As soon as you see the leaves changing color, then be careful. You're either under or overwatering it. And then you are able to sort it out after that. I don't know whether you have the same problem I have. When I buy seeds, I use what I want and I put them in a drawer. Then I go off to the nursery again and I see some seeds. I think, oh, those look so nice. And then I get home and discover I've already got a packet of those. So what I do is, and also we plant microgreens. My husband grows microgreens. He also does his lesson on Get Set Up about growing microgreens. And so what we do is we use an old shutter and just paint it up nicely. And then you peg your seeds onto the shutter. And then you can always see which ones you need and which ones you haven't got. And as you finish them, you can replace them with a new packet. And that it also reminds you what you've got. Because often I've forgotten that I bought this and I've forgotten that I bought that. And they're just living in the drawer. So for me, this is one way of being able to see them. If you can't have a shutter, use an old picture frame. Take the picture frame, put a few strings across, use pegs on the strings and peg up your seeds as well. Works very well. And that's another way of being able to do it. So there are lots of ways of just using what you've got to be able to do it. An old trunk can be turned into a really beautiful garden. And then your ladder, an old ladder that you're too scared to climb on again. All you do is take your ladder and get yourselves a few pieces of wood and put the wood going across and put your planters, all the different pots that you no longer use that are still pretty and you don't really want to throw out. Fill them with plants, fill them with flowers. And if they haven't got a hole in the bottom, just don't water them too much. They'll survive and they'll be very happy in there. And if you also, another thing you can do with your ladder, we do this because we've got such a small place. If we've got friends coming over, we can, and we want to eat outside, we've only got a small table outside. And if you put the food on there, there's no room for us to eat. So I take the ladder, put 2 planks across, put some serviettes over the planks, pretty serviettes, and serve the food on the ladder. Then the people go and help themselves from the ladder and they can sit at the table without the clutter of food being on the table when the tables are small. So there are so many things you can use your ladder for once it's no longer, it's too rickety for you to be able to stand on it. Any thought? Oh, and there's a little table with a drawer in it that was obviously getting too old and just painted up and turned into something pretty. Any thoughts? Not this time. Okay. Right. Now, hanging gardens, bottle hanging gardens. You can take your bottles and you just cut a hole in the top and make a little prick hole at the bottom for excess water to go out. And you can plant all your herbs. You can plant hanging plants. There was a restaurant in South Africa that did this down one wall. And it looked spectacular. People waited in queues to rather have a seat in that hanging wall area than in the rest of the restaurant because it had such a wonderful vibe and ambience. And all this new oxygen that was coming in from the plants really made it into such a lovely experience to sit there. You can use both the top of the bottle and the bottom of the bottle. You don't need to only use the top of the bottle, the bottom of the bottle. If you turn a bottle upside down and you're using the bottom of the bottle for something else, your tops that you were going to throw away can be used just as well to make a hanging. And again, you just make a hole in the plastic of the bottle and hook it onto anything that you have you would like to hook it onto. You can also just make a little herb garden, a hanging herb garden. Just a small plant in each makes a stunning display. The what I would call the light fitting is done with one of those planters at the top, the thin bottom to a pot, and then hanging from that, your bottles, the bottom of the bottles, but just with water, and you put water plants into them. Then the next level is the top of the bottles. And so you hang from bottom to top and down, and it makes a really pretty chandelier. Can make it really attractive. So that's another thought for putting both outdoors and indoors. Other hanging ideas are using bottles at bottoms of bottles, tops of bottles, hanging them out on a bamboo frame to separate one part of your garden from another part. You can use those big oil containers that you would get 5 liters of oil in. Use the bottom as a planter, use the top as a planter. So you've got two. The big 10-liter waters make wonderful growing places for all your vegetables. You can just line them up and plant your veggies. Perfect for growing your veggies. The containers that had your detergent in, I cut a hole in them. I then put them in the dishwasher so they get rid of all the excess detergent out of them. Then I put the soil in the bottom. I cut the shapes that I want and plant my plants. They grow very nicely. And then again, you can put them onto a pallet and they look stunning. So have you ever thought of using your water containers for things like this?
Never. What is the one with the red, white, green, orange, and
That is your big oil, sort of a 2-liter or 3-liter oil that you buy oil in. So it's square base, the square based plastic containers. You take the bottom of and put the bottom at the bottom. Then just get a piece of piping, the plastic piping that you would use for plumbing, to make it a bit of a height, and then put your top of your container turned upside down, and so you get the piping just the right size to fit the bottle over, and then your bottle is turned upside, so the top is upside down and the bottom is your base. Makes a very interesting container.
The bottom ones remind me of Easter eggs for some reason.
Yes. You're quite right. You could certainly hide Easter eggs there. Nobody'd find them because they look like they're part of the flowers. Yeah, no, it's a very interesting concept using your plastic doing that. So it makes for an interesting thing. Now, my final one is a strange one. These are unique things that I have found for the garden that you use mainly plastic for in order to do it. You can build a wall using just plastic bottles filled with sand. They are the strongest wall that you'll ever come across, much stronger than bricks. And it builds a great wall. And then they just slot into each other. They fit in very comfortably, and they make a very interesting feature wall in the garden, and very, very strong. You can use your old galoshes and plant flowers in the galoshes, which is awesome. And then you can also make a sprinkler. Instead of buying a sprinkler, or if you've got one and it doesn't do what you want, use a plastic bottle, attach it to your hose, and depending on where you want, if you're wanting quite a strong spray, you would put all the holes near the bottom and it would spray out as a strong spray. If you wanted a lighter spray that kind of went everywhere, you would make holes in the top of the bottle. So once it's filled, the water is then pushed out through the holes that you've made at the top, and they're kind of random holes that allow for it. If you want to do a terrarium type thing or the starting of growing a plant, when the plant is sort of struggling and it doesn't seem to be wanting to take off, often if you put a bottle on top, leaving the lid off so that there is air getting in, it becomes quite like a little womb for the plant, and plants really thrive in that. And then once they've taken off, you just take the bottle off and use it for something else. You can use your bottles on chairs. And then three things to make. One of the things you can make is taking a 2-liter milk bottle, and you mark where you want to cut on the side where it's a bit difficult because I've already cut all my I use my milk bottles to hold all I've cut a square in it and it holds all the things that I use for crafts. So this particular one's just got toilet rolls in it, but I can hold those. So you would have it at that angle and you would cut your shape that you want because you want the handle. You need the handle part. Then once you've got that, which is what I've done, I've cut it out. I then cut it out just using scissors, very easy to cut out. You cut it nicely to the right shape. You've now got a handle and you've got a little trowel. It won't go into heavy soil that's hard. But if you've got light soil and you're wanting to do some digging up and so on, it works beautifully. If you want to sprinkle seeds, it's lovely. If you're doing mixed seeds in a garden, put your seeds into here and then you just shake it like this and the seeds all go out onto the plants very, very nicely. And all it is a milk bottle. 2-liter milk bottle makes a wonderful shovel. You've got your milk bottle tops. What do I do with my milk bottle tops? Well, I get anything that I've got chopping boards. I bought 5 for $1 and I can only use 1. So the others I've been using to cut up. I put it on a table. I put the shape I want. I put the bottle tops in the shape I want. I mark it and then I cut it. And then I stick them together and stick them on to the backing. I now have a lovely coaster for outside. Very nice, very weatherproof, easy to use. You can also put it down when you're putting something hot. If you're going to be eating outside, it's a wonderful thing to put the hot pots and things on. It works very nicely indeed. Just made out of your milk bottle tops.
What's the base made from?
It's a thin cutting board. You get a series. Here's one of the other ones. It's very, very thin, and it's called a cutting board. You get a pack of 5, and that's what I cut up. I use 1 for cutting on, and the rest have become my crafty things because I really didn't need more than 1. But they come 5 in a pack, so you've got your 5. But you could use anything that you could use cardboard, but I would use anything that's plastic. You could even use, I'm just wondering if this is wide enough, not quite, almost the bottom of a milk bottle. You could probably use the bottom of a milk bottle because this doesn't have to go all the way. So it would cover most of what you need. So you could actually use the bottom of a milk bottle to make your plastic at the base. And then sometimes my tools stand outside and my secateurs get or start to go rusty. And then I get very grumpy because they've gone rusty. So I've taken 2-liter Coca-Cola bottles and I've cut them made them quite big, so quite high up on the bottle and taken 2 of them. Now, I've done it with 2 small bottle tops to show you, because it's easier in the picture. Let me just stop sharing to show you. Right. I've taken 2 bottles and I've cut the tops off them. I've then found the closest in size zip that I could, and I stuck half of the zip on the one and half of the zip on the other. Then all I've done is close the zip. When you're doing it with a big Coke container, it works beautifully. Your secateurs fill in. This would be a bit small for them to fit inside, but it works to show you the size. You can choose what size bottles you want. They then find a zip that matches it. And you can see inside, you can see what you've put in there. They stay nice and dry. It can rain, they can be anywhere, and they are safe. So I found this a very interesting and nice way of saving my tools, particularly if they do live out on the patio and they can get rained on. So it's just easy, just pop them out, use them, pop them back in, and I've got them. So that for me was something that I really enjoyed using. Any questions? This little container that I've made, you can use for anything. You can use it for pencils. You can use it for, if you're a sewer or a knitter, you can put the bottles, you can put your knitting needles in it. You can put anything. You just choose your size and you make your size. And you can have one very long one with a shorter one on top, or a half and half. It's entirely up to you how you use it. All right. Now that comes to the end of it. Now, if you do make any of the things that you've seen today and you'd like to show them to other learners, you can send pictures of what you've made to liz@getsetup.io, and she'll put it onto the website so that others can be inspired and see what creations have been made. My previous class, there was a lady that had made things out of toilet rolls, and I'm really hoping she's going to put her creations up because they are really beautiful. And so there's just so many ideas, and if you see them, it triggers something in your mind to start making something. If you'd like a recording of the session, please just request it at help@getsetup.io. Others of my classes are Upcycling Mementos, Ball and Busters for Seniors, Upcycling Plastic, and Me Time Toilet Roll Creations. The Me Time ones are just for adults. They're all the adult ideas. I do have a kiddies version as well, but Me Time is the adult one. And so there are just some ideas for you. You will get some class notes, and you'll get some ideas. They're sometimes quite random because we get given a set of things we can choose from, and sometimes it doesn't always go with what we've been talking about in class, but we choose 3 for you anyway because all of them are fun. And there's also feedback. If you'd like to give some feedback, it helps us to know how we can improve or whether we're doing a good job. If there's something new you would like, we had a lady wanting toys for pets. We did the first class this week on toys for pets, and that was amazing. There were all sorts of pets in class as well. And so if you've got ideas, please feel free to put them here, and so that we are able to try and fill all the needs of all our learners. If you want to book, you can invite a friend. There will be a link for you to invite your friend or for you to book as well. And if you know of anybody or any community that this would be of use to or beneficial to, please feel free to pass on the help@getseto.io new ideas and or new people, and they will get hold of the correct people for you and speak to them, and maybe more people would be able to enjoy the classes. Well, thank you, ladies. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. How you've stayed awake, I'm not too sure. I really hope it's been of use for you and that I'll be able to see you in some of the other classes.
Okay, thank you. Very nice.
Okay. Oh, great. I hope you go to sleep now, please. Have a great night, both of you. Thanks, Joanne. Thanks, Meg.
Bye.
I
Bye.